Okay, so I will call to order this meeting of the Council of the Town of Los Gatos of September 6, 2022, and ask for a roll call, please.
Councilmember Sack,
Here.
Councilmember Hudis,
Here.
Councilmember Badami,
Here.
Councilmember Vice Mayor Risto,
Here.
Mayor Rennie.
And I am here also. All council members are accounted for. If you could roll our meeting decorum video, please.
The public is welcome to participate at town council meetings, understanding that the purpose of the meetings is to conduct the important business of the town in an efficient and effective manner. At each meeting, the following expectations of civil conduct shall apply. 1. For the benefit of the entire community, the town of Los Gatos asks that all speakers follow the town's meeting guidelines by treating everyone with respect and dignity. This is done by following meeting guidelines set forth in state law, in the town code, and on the cover sheet of the council agenda. 2. The town embraces diversity and strongly condemns hate speech and offensive hateful language or racial intolerance of any kind at council meetings. 3. Town council and staff are well aware of the public's right to disagree with their professional opinion on various town issues. However, antisocial behavior, slander, hatred, and bigotry statements are completely unacceptable and will not be tolerated in any way, shape, or form at town council meetings. 4. All public comments at the town council meeting must pertain to items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the town and shall not contain slanderous statements, hatred, and bigotry against non-public officials. 5. The town will go through the following steps if a disturbance results from a member of the public not following these rules. If participating remotely, town staff may mute the individual with an explanation for the record of why muting occurred consistent with this policy. If participating in person, the mayor may call a recess for violation of this policy, resulting in the immediate cessation of the audio and video recording and the council exiting the chamber. Staff will determine if the individual should be removed or if all members of the public should leave, depending on the extent of the disturbance. In the event that all public members exit, only the press would be allowed back in the meeting. Once the individual or individuals leave, the council would return to the chamber and the mayor would resume the meeting. Persons disrupting a council meeting may be cited for violation of the California Penal Code Section 403. These expectations of conduct also apply to meetings of all town boards, committees, and commissions.
All right, thank you. If I could ask the town attorney to give us a closed session report.
The town council met in closed session to discuss performance evaluations for the town manager and town attorney, and there is no action to report.
Thank you. Let's go to council and manager matters, let's start with Vice Mayor Risto.
Okay. Well, we had a few weeks between meetings, so I have a number of meetings I attended, but of note, the Housing Element Advisory Board met. I was there along with Councilmember Sayak, and we've completed the draft. It's out for public review for the next 30 days, and I imagine our town manager will have more information about that. I attended a talk with Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf discussing ranked choice voting. That's not really relevant to our council elections, but it can be very interesting and helpful for larger elections and state elections. I had the pleasure, because our mayor was traveling, to do the ribbon cuttings for two really fun businesses. One is Footwear Etc., which has taken the place downtown in the Opera House where Soul Desire shoes were, and Bevmo, which just opened on Blossom Hill Road Shopping Center. I attended the Santa Clara Valley Water Summit, and I don't think anybody needs a reminder that we are in a severe drought. Water conservation is absolutely tantamount. Future plans for water supply include working on recycling, with the plan that I think by 2026, the desire would be to be able to recharge our reservoirs with recycled water. And please look at the Valley Water website. There are all kinds of rebate programs for tearing out your lawn, because you really, unless you need it for a play surface, we're not ever going to have enough water for people who have lawns. And so replacing that with drought tolerant landscaping, replacing old sprinkler systems, putting in gray water systems, all of those have substantial rebates tied to them. So if you're ready to do the right thing, you also can get financial assistance along the way. I attended the Senior Services Committee and the Engagement ad hoc meetings, and there's going to start to be kind of senior happy hours once a month with senior pricing for 55 and older at the Palms. And so we'll be posting information about that. It'll be an opportunity once a month to gather and socialize. I attended the thank you gathering for our departing transportation and mobility manager, Ying Smith, who had an amazing opportunity with Contra Costa County, at a director level. But there were a group of us there to thank her for the unbelievably wonderful work she's done for the last 5 years for Los Gatos. And she really has moved us forward so much in terms of our active transportation and bringing in grant money to help forward our work toward kind of reclaiming our outdated streets for all forms of transportation. And with the town manager and our director of community development, met with some neighbors of a business on University Avenue just to listen to and witness the issues there. And our town manager and director will be looking at what tools we have to help address those issues. And then finally, I was at NUMU last week for the Content Magazine pickup party. And it was just amazing to see our really beautiful museum filled with about 300 people, many of whom weren't from Los Gatos, who were there to enjoy a party, but also witness, how beautiful our town is and what great facilities we have. So that's it.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you for filling in on the ribbon cuttings. Councilmember Badami.
Thank you. On August 23rd, the Council Policy Committee met and discussed updating the town core goals and guiding principles to align with the 2040 general plan. We will be discussing that tonight as agenda item number 10. On August 29th, I met with the Community Health and Senior Services Commissioner to discuss town priorities and additional volunteer opportunities. And on August 31st, I attended consecutive board meetings with the West Valley Solid Waste Management and Clean Water Authorities. We actually approved assessing liquidated damages of $81,548.47 to West Valley Collection and Recycling for a combination of double missed pickups and for material delivered to incorrect facilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sack.
Thank you. In addition to the committees already mentioned by both Vice Mayor Risto and Councilmember Badami, just a series of planning meetings for Cal City's Peninsula Division as they prepare for the conference, and a Peninsula Division event at Filoli later this month. Thanks.
Councilmember Hudes.
Thank you. Let's see. On August 25th, I participated in the Santa Clara County Emergency Operations Area Council, and the primary topic was water shortages, and that also carried over into the water summit that the Vice Mayor attended as well the next day. And part of the discussion was about what happens if we don't reach our conservation goals. And I felt like that was something that should be communicated a little bit more. We're doing actually, and we are making some progress on conservation, but this is likely to continue for some time. And it would be, I think, valuable for the public to have a heads up about what would happen if we are not able to meet our goals. I met with a couple of members of the community garden group that's interested in the community garden on Pinehurst after the council discussed and approved some additional capital for that. They are very interested and eager to work with Ms. Burnham and the town in taking the next step with that. Then I also met with a member of the business community on University Avenue and got a bit of understanding of some of the challenges on that street, how it's affecting not just his business, but other businesses of different sorts. And so I'll be interested actually in talking with the town manager about some of the ideas that were generated in that conversation as well. That is an issue that was raised a couple of years ago over dumpsters blocking the street, but it's since evolved into something that's more of a substantial concern. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hudis. And for me, my boards and commissions were light. The VTA board and the BACMed board take August off, and was very light for Silicon Valley Clean Energy also on meetings in August. The only board meeting I attended was the VTA on September 1st, starting the month of September. Other than that, I fielded many challenges from our residents by email and forwarded those on to staff to take care of. With that, let me go to manager matters.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. I have a lot to report. There's a lot happening in our community right now. First off, there is a health fair that is happening on Saturday at the high school. We've got wonderful vendors. This is a collaboration partially funded through our ARPA monies with SASE. So we invite the public to come. The theme is reducing the stigma associated with mental health. So a lot of great vendors and partners to learn information there. Also on Saturday, our JCC is hosting a training for disaster shelter. And if somebody participates in this 5-hour training, then they will receive a certificate as a disaster service worker in the shelter area. Then we have a lot of activities happening around land use right now. As was mentioned, our draft housing element is out for public review for 30 days. We welcome the public's comments. More information about that is on our public website. We are also returning with the draft objective standards to our Planning Commission on September 14th. This is an opportunity for the public to weigh in on those draft standards. After the Planning Commission makes its recommendation, they will be coming to the council for further consideration. We are also working on the permanent ordinance for Senate Bill 9, and a community meeting is being scheduled for later on this month. So there'll be more information coming for that, but I know that's of great interest to our public. So please watch for announcements there. And then we are working on a survey for Oak Meadow Bandstand. You may have seen some of the sandwich boards that are around town. We're really encouraging park users to give us their input about how we might be able to improve the amenities around the bandstand. And then lastly, also at Oak Meadow Park, we are doing our annual Screen on the Green and showing a wonderful film called Encanto. This is a family-friendly event and will be happening on, let me make sure I get the right date, September 23rd, and all families are welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Town Manager. Next up is our consent agenda, which consists of items 1 through 8. Would any council member wish to pull an item from consent? Seeing none, would any member of the community wish to comment on items 1 through 8 on the consent agenda? If so, please raise your virtual hand. Not seeing any hands coming up. I'll close public comment for the consent calendar and come back to council for a motion or comments. Councilmember Badami.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent items 1 through 8.
Vice Mayor Risto.
I second the motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further comments from council members? Don't see any hands, so I will call the question. Vice Mayor Risto.
Aye.
Councilmember Badami.
Aye.
Councilmember Sayak.
Aye.
Councilmember Hudis.
Aye.
And the mayor votes aye. So the consent calendar consisting of items 1 through 8 passes unanimously. Next up is verbal communications, where people can address us on items that are not on our agenda that are town business, but not on our agenda tonight. And you will have 3 minutes to do that. And we'll start with Gillian Verga, please.
Hello, it's Jillian.
Jillian.
Hi, I'm Jillian Verga. I'm a 24-year resident of Los Gatos. I'm also the chair of the Complete Streets and Transportation Commission this year. And I'd like to correct a comment that was made and repeated at the last town council meeting. At a review of the currently planned transportation projects, Councilmember Hudis calculated that the most expensive 2 transportation projects added together would cost Los Gatos $4,000 per resident. The actual amount the town will pay comes to $153 per resident for the Highway 17 bicycle and pedestrian overcrossing, and about $260 per resident for 3 combined projects on Winchester and the northern section of the Los Gatos Creek Trail. The total for the projects Mr. Hudis was referring to is $413, not $4,000. Why is this important? First, it's important to understand that the transportation projects we're working on are 90% paid for with grant money. Right now, there's a lot of federal and state support for bicycle and pedestrian projects, which could, if we are awarded these grants, allow Los Gatos to do complete streets projects that otherwise would be prohibitively expensive for a town of our size. The application process for these grants starts with the town having a bike and pedestrian master plan, something Los Gatos wrote in 2015. And since then, Los Gatos has received $28 million in funding. We should be happy that we have a town staff that's able to bring so much benefit to our town. And we should be very clear that we do not, I repeat, we do not have $4,000 per resident that we could choose to spend on something else. The second thing that's important to understand is that these projects are part of a larger plan called Connect Los Gatos, which benefits all type of residents. When the Bike and Ped Master Plan was put together, it looked both at the common routes to school and at ways to connect the different parts of Los Gatos. Hence, the Highway 17 Bike and Ped Overcrossing, which connects East and West Los Gatos to Visona, the Creek Trail, and Fisher and Van Meter schools. Phase 2 of Winchester connects North and South Los Gatos by adding sidewalks and crosswalks so that everyone who lives along Winchester will have a safe and pleasant walk into downtown. These projects are designed for residents who like to walk, bike, scooter, stroller, rollerblade, one-wheel, or unicycle around town. Safer bike and ped routes benefit car drivers too. No driver wants to risk endangering a biker or a pedestrian. And every time someone chooses active transportation for their journey, it leaves the streets with one less car to clog traffic. Thank you.
Thank you, Jillian Verga, and thank you for correcting me on your pronunciation of your name. You do have a question from Councilmember Hudis.
Thank you, Ms. Verga. I did send an email that I believe you were copied on, and I just really had one question. Are you aware that I did not state that the most expensive 2 transportation projects added together would cost Los Gatos $4,000 per resident? If you are not aware of that, I suggest that you check the video and the transcript of what I did say. And I do think it's an important topic. And so I've also suggested to the town manager that we have a study session to talk about how we fund these items. At any rate, that was a question.
I watched the video of that town council meeting. I didn't watch it live. I watched the video, and I came away from that hearing that you were implying that it was a cost of $4,000 per resident, which is why I felt it was important to clarify.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Verga. Would anybody else wish to address us on an item that is not on tonight's agenda, but is town business? Not seeing any further hands, I will close verbal communication and go to item number 9, which is to approve the recommendation of the policy committee to update the town core goals and guiding principles to align with the 2040 general plan. And I'll turn that over to staff.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. I'm Holly Young, the analyst in the town manager's office. The item before you regarding the town's core goals and guiding principles began as a request at the January strategic priorities meeting from the town council for the policy committee to examine the definitions of the town's core goals. This provided a good opportunity to also look at the town's guiding principles. The policy committee initially saw this item at their March meeting, but at that time, the 2040 general plan had not yet been approved. The committee asked staff to return once the general plan had been approved so that the definitions could align with the general plan's vision and guiding principles. Following the approval of the 2040 general plan in June, the policy committee reviewed this item again at its August meeting. The committee unanimously agreed to forward a recommendation to the town council to update the town core goals and guiding principles to align with the 2040 general plan. The policy committee's recommended updates are available in the report, and staff is available to support any questions. Thank you.
Any questions from council before I go to the public? Seeing none, I will open up public comment on item number 9. And would any member of the public wish to comment on item number 9? Not seeing any hands coming up, I'll close public comment on item 9 and come back to council for questions or motion, so forth. So let me, okay, go ahead, Councilmember Badami.
I didn't see any hands up, so I was going to go ahead with a motion, but Mayor, if you would like to add some comments ahead of that, I'd be happy to hear it.
I did have a comment. It's sort of a question, but really maybe it's more of a comment. When I was looking at community character, I thought of community character both as the physical, like how we allow our neighborhoods to be built and so forth, but also that's the tangible, but also some of the intangible. And I was wondering if we had thought about adding to the semicolon list something like welcoming community for all, or for all, the usual language of all ethnic backgrounds and so forth and so forth, because that seems to be a community character item to me that is addressed a little bit later on, but it also seems like a community character to me. So I just wanted to see if anybody else had thought about that or wanted to consider that. I see Vice Mayor Risto, I guess your hand up.
Thank you. First of all, I wanted to commend the policy committee and the staff for doing such a good job. This reads very well. I like the inclusions and the updates. I hadn't really thought about what the mayor was bringing up, although as I read it, I don't know if something could be added about, supporting a variety of activities, or if there were some other words, but I don't really want to wordsmith this tonight. I think enough is covered elsewhere that I would be comfortable, unless people have compelling language, with accepting this the way it is. I do think it's really well written, and I don't think anything we write will be 100% comprehensive and perfect.
Okay, Councilmember Hudes.
I agree with the Vice Mayor that this is a step forward on this and reflects, I think, a lot of the sentiment that went into the general plan. And so I don't think it's necessary to make that any change at this point, but I did want to understand a little bit about the background on a couple of things that were deleted and whether it's felt that they were covered elsewhere or the community had moved on and these were not as important anymore. Under community stewardship, and I think in another place, there's one of the things that's listed is vibrant shopping districts, and that was recommended for deletion. And then in another place, I noticed that strong neighborhoods was deleted, and I was wondering if there was a reason for that. And as you know, Los Gatos is a community of neighborhoods, so I'm just sort of more interested in the background than in making any specific changes.
So that could be an answer from staff, or if one of the members of the policy committee wanted to answer it. Is there somebody from staff have an idea on that? If not, perhaps one of the policy committee members wanted to add something.
Thank you for the question. I can start. So I think it was just a matter of updating the language. So we took out vibrant shopping districts and then replaced it with a lively and accessible downtown and dynamic and thriving business community, which I believe that language is more consistent with what's in the general plan, vision, and guiding principles.
And then there was a second place Mr. Hudis mentioned also.
Yeah, that was about strong neighborhoods was, I think, deleted. And I can tell you where that was. That was under community stewardship as well. And whether we've captured that concept elsewhere and it's not necessary, or whether the community has moved on from that concept.
Thank you. I think that was the same thing. So we took out a balanced, well-designed community with strong neighborhoods, and instead the language reads a range of housing opportunities and historic. So work to maintain a range of housing opportunities in historic neighborhoods.
Okay, let me go to Councilmember Badami. May have input here or something else.
Well, I had two issues to address, and this actually is a new one. I actually think that that's a strong point, that maybe we want to keep that in there. I think our neighborhoods are very, very important. And yes, we want diversity. And yes, we're going to have, different types of housing, but we still want strong neighborhoods. We want good relationships with our neighbors. And we want to be welcoming. And that's what keeps a strong neighborhood is good relationships. So we might want to reconsider adding that back in. And then the other reason I had my hand up was to the mayor's point, that with community character, we do put the comment in there about enhancing diverse neighborhoods and promoting under civic engagement, ethnic, cultural, and socioeconomic diversity and equity to enhance the quality of life in Los Gatos. So I think that speaks to being a welcoming and inclusive community. So I think it's well addressed there. Those are my comments.
Okay, I don't disagree. I knew it was included other places. It just was a thought that I wanted to share. I didn't feel that strongly. Councilmember Sack.
Thanks. It sounds like there's general consensus and that there's acceptance of the language. I appreciate, Mayor, your pointing out community character and civic engagement. I know when Councilmember Badami, who's chair of the policy committee, and I discussed it. Overall, we felt that the values that we want were in the document and not trying to wordsmith, but trying to figure out where it most makes sense. So I appreciate the sentiment, but I'm actually quite comfortable with the language as is. And I'll just see if we have movement towards a motion. So I'll make the motion that we approve the recommendation of the policy committee as contained to update the town core goals and guiding principles to align with the 2040 general plan.
Vice Mayor Risto.
Thank you. For the reasons I stated earlier, I will support the motion and second the motion.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Would anybody else wish to comment or ask for changes or any? If not, I will go ahead and call the motion then. Councilmember Sack,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Risto,
Aye.
Councilmember Badami,
Aye.
Councilmember Hudes,
Aye.
and the mayor votes aye. That passes unanimously. So we will move on to item number 10, which is to receive the requested community survey follow-up information. And I'll turn that over to staff.
Thank you and good evening again. On May 3rd, the council considered and discussed the community survey that was put together by ETC Institute. This was our first scientific survey of the community, and it is something that we would love to be able to do every 2 years so we can get time series data and assess how well we are doing in providing town services, the satisfaction level of our community, and areas where we believe we can get stronger. After the conversation with the council, there was a motion for staff to return with a follow-up report on potential action items. And that is what this report this evening is all about. We did go back through the findings of the report. It helped us identify the things that meant the most to our community. As we've discussed back in May, the quality of police services and the overall maintenance of the town streets, sidewalks, and infrastructure were the most important things to our residents. The analysis also identified things that had opportunities for improvement. And there were opportunities in many of the core goals that you just described. So when we looked at the survey results, the community was really focused on public safety. Again, how visible are our officers? What are our efforts to reduce crime, et cetera? Quality public infrastructure. Again, how's our infrastructure doing? What's the flow on traffic on our streets? How's the quality of our park facilities? What are we doing for biking and hiking trails in the town? Community character, we just talked about community character. That's really where we have economic opportunity, as well as how we're managing growth and taking care of those tangible and intangible items that we just talked about. And then civic engagement. And clearly there were a lot of comments about how the town could do better in terms of communication. The survey results are incredibly valuable. And with us this evening is Esther Campbell. If you have additional detailed questions about the survey methodology or how to use the results, town staff are using the results as we continue to look at process improvements. As we discussed in August, we have a culture of continuous change and continuous improvements. And when we get survey results like this, it really helps us identify where we need to focus our attention. So clearly in the survey, there was interest in improving our town building and planning services. And as we discussed in August, that is an area that staff is currently putting focus. Overall, the work plan that is contained in our adopted budget for the current fiscal year does align with the priorities of the community. And so at this time, I am not asking or seeking any further direction for new action. Instead, I think we need to encourage and support the implementation of our current budget and work that's underway. This includes, of course, our capital program for streets and infrastructure. It includes all the great work that you heard last month on police services and community policing. And then, of course, continuing our efforts on communication and public engagement. I would say that I think as we look forward to January and our priority setting, that we should again reflect on the survey and the areas where we might want to put additional emphasis for next year and the development of our 2023-24 budget. But with this, staff is open to answer any questions. And as I say, we have other staff available as you might want to continue the conversation. Thank you.
Okay, so let me go to questions from council before I go to public comment. We'll start with Councilmember Badami.
Thank you. Just a quick question for staff. What was the cost of doing this survey? And if we're going to repeat it every 2 years, is this recommended, or should we kind of spread it out a little bit? But more than anything, I just need to know the cost. Thank you.
If I could ask for a little bit of help, Esther, I don't know.
I got you. I got you, Town Manager.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. Good to see you all again. Thanks for letting me come and ambush you again and see you all. It's good to see you all. So just to answer that, so the total for the survey is 18,000, and that includes the printing, mailing, just everything, including from the beginning to the end of presentation, $18,000. It's very typical that we do this every 2 years. Some communities do it every year. However, and my saleswoman would say, yeah, do it every year. However, I recommend it every 2 years is fine. And that gives you enough time in between surveys to get that trend data. However, I am happy, especially for smaller communities, I'm always happy to meet you where your budget is. And I love you guys. You guys are actually my first clients because I just kind of got into project management. So you guys are my first clients. So I'm happy to help you where your budget is. So typically it's 18,000. However, I can also maybe chip out a couple thousand off of that and maybe add a couple extras. That also includes a digital dashboard, an interactive dashboard. Typically is $5,000. However, we give it to you for free. And that will be updated every time you do a survey. And it's really cool when you get in there with GIS maps and you start seeing the trend data and everything. You all are going to have that at your fingertips. And that will be, you all will have that for the rest of your life. And that will be updated every time you have a survey. So 18,000. However, I'm happy to talk and negotiate if we come to budget terms.
Well, thank you for that information, and thank you for the offer to enter into negotiations with you.
I'm happy to do it. I mean, I would if it was like a couple thousand and I couldn't be your friends anymore, I'll chip off a couple thousand.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, let me go to public comment. Would any member of the public wish to comment on this item? Not seeing any hands raised. I'll close public comment for item number 10 and come back to council for questions, comments, motion. Do we need a motion? This is just a receive, so maybe we just need comments. Vice Mayor Risto.
Thank you. I actually would be very interested in continuing this survey every 2 years, especially if someone's willing to work with potentially budget issues for us. But, I think the information that we get out of such a survey, we don't have the context previously for where people viewed some of these issues. We don't know if changing conditions have shifted our community's priorities. We know, for those of us who talk to a lot of the public, we kind of know where people are, but I think this is extraordinarily helpful. And it will be extremely helpful in priority setting this year. I like the idea of going 2 years, seeing trends. It's going to be really hard to see the impact of, infrastructure projects take a long time, changes at community development. If we change a permit process or start tracking things, that will take time for projects to go through and see a difference in how that service is perceived. changes that our police department's already implemented in terms of being more accessible to the public. It'll be great to see how that fills out over the next 2 years. So, I think as useful as the information is here, and I would say I get a lot of value out of what we have, and even more value from reading the comments. So I think that's important to include. But I think that in 2 years' time, it'll be even more clear, and as time trends onward. So thank you. I appreciate this a lot. And I'm glad that the town has started on this path, and I'm looking forward to seeing how we can make this a very useful tool. Thanks.
Councilmember Hudes.
Thanks. I had comments in 2 areas, and they related to the items that came up as the highest dissatisfaction and the highest importance score combined together. And the very highest dissatisfaction and importance is how well town is managing growth. That was 61.9% and 24% for a combined, I guess they call it an IS score of 0.47, which was by far the highest. And so I just want to make sure that as we're going forward, these surveys turn into actions, because there's no point in doing a survey every 2 years if we don't listen. And so the growth issue, and there was some conversation about this in May 3rd. And as I look back on it, and I looked at the public comments and the sentiment, it seems to me that the citizens have a concern about too much growth. It was suggested that it may be not enough growth. But when you couple that with the number 2 item, which is traffic and transportation and getting around town, that had the second most critical IS score. And so as we go into thinking about actions going forward, it seems what is in the report now about annual pavement project and pedestrian and bicycle improvements is probably not enough to address the issues that residents have raised. And so I know it was commented that there's no easy fix for cut through traffic, but serious measures can get taken to deal with this. And I don't think we've looked at it in a fresh way. And residents have brought forth a number of ideas, including dynamic traffic routing based on real-time congestion data, regulating traffic at the Highway 17 South entrance at South Santa Cruz, and forming and reaching out to our community for expertise within our own community that are experienced app engineers. And then finally putting this before the CSTC to work on this issue. I don't believe it's been worked on. So I think it's still an important issue. There were several other ideas that were raised. I'm just going to list them off so that we don't forget them. But one was requiring critical street construction to be performed during off hours. Another one related to that was to require street improvements to be completed before developers can sell properties. Specifically, the work on Lark has dragged on for 2 years, and it seems as though that's another area of potential improvement. And then finally, working on private-public partnerships to create town-wide shuttles as developments come along. So I think there are a number of ideas there that I think are important. Some of them I think would be within the purview of the CSTC to help us work on, and others are probably more related to town goals. But those were the 2 highest, and it seems that it's important that we address that. Otherwise, there's no point in doing another survey in 2 years.
And let me jump in and ask a question at this point. I suspect that you're able to keep the price of this survey modest because you're using a standard template. And Mr. Hudis brought up the sort of we don't understand very well the growth question. When I stop and I think about growth in the last 10 years, the town's grown 3% in terms of residents. That's 0.3% per year. So we haven't grown residence wise. Even if I look at class school size, we have decreasing class sizes rolling through about the 4th or 5th grade now, where we've got an inverse bubble in class size. So it's difficult for me to understand if people think we aren't really growing. So is it a misunderstanding, or is it that, as suggested, that it's not growing fast enough? But what I'm really leading to, since this has been it's not provided us the clarity we want. The next time we do this survey, are there ideas on how to make this, to get a result with a little more clarity to it, given that you probably have a template that you don't want to change very much, so that the cost doesn't go up?
So thank you so much for asking that, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to raise my hand while Councilmember Hudis was speaking, because I wanted to tell you so bad is that that's actually one thing that makes us different, is that we don't have a template. So when we're going in there, since this was a first survey, we don't really know what's happening. So we just kind of want to get a pulse of what's happening. Now that I see what is happening, we're going to ask more detailed questions. And the reason that we do keep that, I can offer you to take a couple $1,000s off, is because A, we want your business, but most of all, you're a small town and we want to help you. We want to serve you. There are larger cities out there that they have the budget that they can do these surveys, and they can do them regularly, and they don't even think about it. However, where our heart is too, is we don't want to just serve those large cities. We want to serve the small towns, the small cities. And so we're able to do that, to write off a couple $1,000, because we do want to provide this service to you, because we believe in the data and we believe in you, and we want to make sure that you're growing as a town, and that you all are providing the services to satisfy your residents. So whenever we get into 2 years from now and we're looking at the survey, we can ask, I do agree, we do need to ask more clarifying questions on what exactly managing growth do you, so I'm going to ask more clarifying questions. We're going to go in there with surgical tools and stuff and see what the heck is going on in these people's minds. So we're going to ask those types of questions. Same thing with, your sidewalks and infrastructure. We're going to ask more clarifying questions of, and then based off the work that you're about to do, we can ask questions about that too. So we don't have a template, and that's what sets us apart from our competitors. The competitors have templates, but we don't have a template. We have questions like those core questions that are our benchmarking questions, so we can compare you to other places in the same region or nationally. However, we do want to make sure that this is a tool that helps you. So to answer your question, we're going to ask questions that answer those questions that you all have.
Thank you. Let's go to Vice Mayor Risto.
Thank you. I do think, sometimes getting the data, what you hear from people is not necessarily factual. So I talk to a lot of residents who are absolutely sure that the next housing project is going to make our schools explode because our schools are overcrowded. And then when I remind them or let them know, talk to any school board member, the schools actually have been dropping in population for the last 5 years. They are not overcrowded. As you pointed out, Mayor, sometimes it's important to figure out, I guess, what kind of information needs to go out there. I do hear a lot of the same comments all the time about how to try to deal with cut through traffic. And we do have a robust page, or we did, in Parks and Public Works, talking about what we've tried, what doesn't work, what we have control over and what we don't. I mean, sometimes, I know on a weekend like this, when it's scorching hot and every single person in the Bay Area wants to be at the beach, there's not a lot that can be done. But there are things that have been done. There are right turn prohibitions from every road coming out of the Almond Grove onto Santa Cruz Avenue effective on Saturdays. And that has actually impacted the mapping apps so that people do not cut through the Almond Grove on Saturdays between 10 and 3. And when you don't have gridlock in the Almond Grove on Saturday and you do on Sunday, it tells you that those signs are working. And so there's probably things we can learn from that. I think that's important. The other is the ongoing communication. I've heard a lot of people talk about the construction on Lark Avenue, and then they need to be reminded that there was a choice of having work go on all through the night and having people that already live near the North 40 not be able to sleep or drag the project out, which creates pain, but does not have construction going on at night. Often when people want construction to happen during off hours, they're probably not the ones that live next to the construction. So I think, that's the other thing we always have to balance, like, how do we accommodate residents that are most impacted with quality of life, whereas others maybe see a traffic impact. So I think those all do bring up really good points for us to think about. The other thing is when we talk about the housing, I found that kind of interesting when people talk about managing growth, because as you pointed out, Mayor, we really haven't grown. But a lot of times people have a perception, we have a lot of people that have to commute into and through Los Gatos, and they may view that traffic as related to housing in the town. But there were some letters to the council from a couple of residents who on their own had paid for a survey. And I thought the results of those were quite revealing, because in there, one of the questions they asked was, if residents felt a need for more affordable housing. And ignoring the fact that we actually don't have a choice, we have a mandate from the state with our RENA numbers. What was interesting is residents who own a home were very much felt like we didn't need more housing and we didn't need more affordable housing. And residents that rented saw a great need for affordable housing. So, in my estimation as a council member, I'm going to look for people that actually need something to find out what is needed, rather than if somebody's needs are already being met, having them define what we should be doing for people that actually need something, if I can make that clear. But I do think maybe a study session on, what has been done with cut through traffic, what are the issues that we think we have control over, what have we tried that hasn't worked, and where can we take a fresh look, is always helpful. And I think moving forward, I like your comments, Ms. Campbell, about where you can drill down deeper. So in 2 years, because at that point we will already be starting into our housing element. Who knows if we'll have any construction happening yet, but we can dig down into the perceptions and who's answering it and where they sit and which needs are being met and what kind of needs they have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sack.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Campbell, as you can tell, we love data. So, so I would also be quite supportive of having this continue every 2 years. I am curious, though. I agree with all the concepts and what has already been said about moving forward. I'm wondering, though, if there is a way to drill down deeper with this question of managing growth. For example, the specific question I wanted to know, those that said we're not doing a good job, were they also the same ones who said that there wasn't enough affordable downsize? I forgot the question now, but there wasn't enough housing to downsize.
Yeah.
And so when I look at all these different answers, I'm curious if it's the same person answering it the same way. Because if someone's concerned that they have nowhere to downsize to, then maybe they're concerned that there isn't enough growth for them to move down into. So that's, I guess, my long question to you. Can you see who's answering those questions so that it gives you a better sense of what does it mean when someone says we weren't doing a good job of managing growth?
Yeah, definitely. So that would be, I would run cross tabulations for you. So I would see okay, so typically just a typical cross tabulation would be on demographics. So we're looking at demographics. However, I am capable of running cross tabs on, okay, you answered this question. Now, how, like the folks that answered this one question, how did they answer other questions? So that's how I would see, that's how I would look at that. So for example, say for how well town managing growth, I would run, so either way, I could see, okay, how did folks answer how well town managing growth? So very satisfied to very dissatisfied. And then how did they answer the rest of the questions? Availability of adequate and affordable housing units. I could, how they said very satisfied to very dissatisfied, then I could see how they answered the rest of those questions. So it would just be just cross tabulations that I can run. And so then I would see, okay, these folks, and then I can just mesh that with demographics. So really it's just, that's a very long-winded question for an easy answer, cross tabulations. So just more data running.
Thank you. And so I guess what I would suggest to town staff is that before you embark on this 2 years from now, what are the questions that the council and the community would like answered? So that gives Esther a better sense of how to present it. Because it sounds like there's data there that we could cross tabulate in so many different ways. But since this was your first time working with us, you weren't sure yet which of those data sets would be most important.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what sickness was going on in Los Gatos. Like I was, I don't know what's happening there. So this was just a good foundational year. Of course, I'll ask same questions. We'll see, okay, these are questions we want to trend. But then these are types of questions. For example, managing growth is obviously one that we're going to want to go deeper on. And then, okay, businesses, what does that mean? Affordable housing, the infrastructure. So like the flow of traffic, your roads, your sidewalks. So those are kind of and then communication was a big one. So those are kind of big ones that we'll ask the same questions, but then these core questions, we'll ask deeper questions, if that makes sense. Another thing that we also did on this survey, I'm sure that you all know this, but we also asked for additional, if residents would, basically we got a panel of residents. We asked for if you'd want to participate in additional surveys. And so we could do quick pulse surveys for you, because I think we have well over 400. Don't quote me, I'll have to get the right number for you, but we have well over 400 to 500 residents that said that they would want to participate in those types of pulse surveys. I'm happy to do those for you. They would be, just 5, 6, no more than 10 questions. But I can do that for you free of charge, no charge on that. But that way we keep the panel alive. And I think we're also in a really good position with just how much stuff you have going on. So you get these priorities out there and everything. Well, we can do another pulse survey to kind of ask, well, what are you thinking? What's going on? This will not be a random survey. These are panels that say they want to participate. So there's no science behind it. However, it does give you a sense. It's also in a controlled environment. I'm controlling it. And you guys don't have your hands on it. So there's that piece that a third party is doing it. And we're getting the data for you and then presenting it to you. So you kind of get a temperature of what's going on.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Councilmember Hudes.
Yeah, I just wanted to raise the point that this survey was done with the backdrop of the development of a general plan. And so my question really is for the town manager. Does the town manager believe that the public is saying there's not enough growth? Or do you think it might have been influenced by the efforts that were going on to exceed the growth that's mandated by the state by a very significant number?
I can't, I have no idea what was motivating the responses from the public. I think we would have to dive deeper into the data and ask follow-up questions.
I respectfully would have to say that the town management should have their eyes open about what the residents are feeling about something as important as that, since it was the #1 issue here. And I would just respectfully disagree that the town management should realize that the growth that was being pushed to exceed the state requirements must have been a factor here. I think we'll probably have other opportunity to discuss those specifics at a later time, but I would just encourage town staff to pay attention to the strength of opinion on this particular item and the sentiment of the residents.
And let me just clarify for those listening. So the purpose of this survey was that, you know, we realized that we had a tough budget position, and we wanted to take a look at if we had to think about reducing some services, what were the people in, what were our residents' preferences? What did they definitely want us to save? And, you know, effectively, what did they not mention? And maybe we could make some reductions there. And Councilmember Hudes is saying it was sort of unfortunate that we were also doing the general plan at that time, and that may have affected some of the responses in a different way than we were looking for. I'll go to Vice Mayor Risto.
Thank you. Councilmember Hudes brings up an interesting point, because we actually have zero idea in this scientific survey, because it wasn't asked if any of the residents who answered the question, or how many of them even thought about the general plan changes, or what some of the spin was put about where the numbers arrived. And so pulse survey, it would be interesting if we do some follow-ups just to find out, because I can guarantee there are people who answered that survey that didn't even hear about the general plan. So I don't want to, and maybe it did affect it, but I'm not going to jump to any conclusions without data. And so, you know, from that perspective, if we think that's important, that might be something to cover. But I'm not going to make that assumption based on anything.
All right, so we may be winding down here. I think we've given staff a lot of feedback. We don't require a motion. So if there's no other hands, I will end this item and move us on to item number 11, which is to receive the American Leadership Forum Insights Discovery Report regarding justice, equity, diversity, and inclusivity, and direct the town manager to work with ALFI in the development of a JEDI plan. And I will turn it over to staff.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Let me first thank Esther Campbell for joining us for the prior item. Really appreciate your participation. Thank you. On this next item, we are happy to provide to the council our report from the American Leadership Forum, ALF. And we are really happy to see the recommendations in the report. They interviewed several stakeholders within the town of Los Gatos, listened deeply, and found some very interesting findings as reported in the report and in the staff report. One is that there were quite a number of opportunities for the town to continue its work on justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and opportunities for us to continue to commit to that work. The process identified a sense of hope for future involvement for community work in this area, the importance of us being an inclusive town, and that was defined differently. So we do have some work to do on definitions and what all of this means. There are concerns and fears for the personal safety of people who might want to engage in this work with us. And this is something that, of course, we take very seriously. Public safety is one of our #1 priorities here. And then finally, there are various levels of knowledge about the town's work in this equity area. And we need to really develop more of a plan with specificity and accountability. So it was really with all of the findings and then the individual recommendations from the report, and there are some great ideas. So thank you so much to all of our public who participated in the discovery process. That really, the more I looked at the recommendations, and we're doing little things here and there. The council has accomplished quite a bit. We know there's more to do, but really this last point about needing a plan with more specificity and accountability led me to the recommendation that we continue to work with ALFI and develop that plan, develop the short-term goals, the long-term goals, the action items that would go with each, and the metrics. So that way we can make ourselves accountable on these efforts, work with the community to define what do we mean by equity, diversity, inclusion for Los Gatos, and how do we get there? I propose that we continue our work with ALFI, given their knowledge of Los Gatos, and given their experience with deep dialogue with community groups. This would be a partnership with the town, so that way we can do it in a cost-effective way. Town staff would work with each of our commissions to get their input. The town also has an internal equity team, and we would engage our own staff in this process as well. And then ALFI would put all of this together in a framework where we could use the actual recommendations and perhaps some of the action items from our newly adopted general plan, and really give us a framework for implementation. So that is the staff recommendation before you this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions. The other option for your consideration is to consider the recommendations one by one as you set your strategic priorities in January. You basically look at all of the different general plan action items and then all of these recommendations. But I think we might accomplish more together if we have a common sense of where we're going. And that's really the fundamental reason for the recommendation, that we continue to work in a community-based process on the development of a plan. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's see. Does anybody have questions before we go to public comment? Don't see any hands being raised, so let's go to public comment. Would anybody wish to address us on item number 11? We will start with Kylie Clark.
Good evening, Council. My name's Kylie Clark, and I'm a Los Gatos resident and member of the Los Gatos Anti-Racism Coalition. I'm also a Los Gatos Planning Commissioner, but I'm not speaking in that capacity tonight. I first want to say how glad the coalition was to be included in the outreach for this report and to be given a listening session. And it seems like really comprehensive community outreach was done, so I really appreciate these efforts. I'm here to voice my strong support for these justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion efforts by the town, and also to encourage you all to continue along this path. Additionally, I want to provide some insight into the concerns and ideas voiced by the Anti-Racism Coalition during our listening session. Some I see reflected in the report and others not quite as much. So from my viewpoint, there were two main issues that members of our coalition discussed during this meeting. First, above all, housing was the #1 need when it comes to genuinely making our town more inclusive, welcoming, and diverse. It is futile to plan to embrace other cultures, races, and income levels if they are not even able to live in Los Gatos. One of the main causes of our need for these JEDI efforts is the fact that our town is made up of predominantly white, high-income, and non-immigrant residents. Just having this diversity exist within Los Gatos would go leaps and bounds in achieving our JEDI goals. However, without these folks living here, there's really only so much that we can do to become the town that we all agree we want to be. Second, there was a consensus that these reports, efforts, and policies need to be accompanied by tangible, legitimate investment. If we're claiming that this is a priority for Los Gatos, we need to demonstrate this by budgeting for and funding advancements towards equity and inclusion. So thank you all for your hard work to make our town a place where everyone is safe, accepted, and welcome, and have a good night.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. I don't see any questions for you. So thank you for your thoughts. Would anybody else wish to address us on this item? I'm not seeing any more hands, so I'll close public comment and come back to council for questions, comments, and we are looking for a motion to direct further work or not. Vice Mayor Risto.
Thank you. Knowing that as we were setting our priorities last year, that this was a priority that we unanimously voted on, it's nice to see this result. And I really appreciate and condemn the diversity of organizations represented and residents in and around Los Gatos that participated in this, in these talking sessions, and, what kind of work we can do coming out of here. I am not somebody that enjoys seeing a report just sit on a shelf, and I think our commitment is to turn this into action. Given that, I think it would be very hard to move forward with our priority setting next January if we don't have a plan and see how this moves forward. So I would really like to see the continuing effort and have ALF put together a plan of long and short-term goals. And then when we're setting our priorities in January, we can figure out what we'd be able to implement, in the next year, or how we set those priorities. But I don't think we can even talk about that if we don't go forward with having a plan put together. So I'm in favor of that.
Is that a motion?
I can make that a motion. I didn't know if we wanted a discussion, but yeah. So I'll move that we go forward with spending the remainder in the contract with ALF to get a short and long-term, to get a plan to move forward for our JEDI effort with short and long-term goals.
And also they're suggesting 12,000 be used from non-departmental. So I assume that's
right. The additional, yes, from down. I'm sorry. And so the balance of what was allocated for the work, and in addition, the $12,000 to move this forward. Thank you.
And do I have a second for the motion? Councilmember Sack.
I'll happily second the motion. Thank you. And I just want to echo what Vice Mayor Risto has said. I think the town has shown that not only do we talk the talk, but we walk the walk. And I appreciate the town staff and all those that participated in the discovery report and sharing their thoughts and partaking in it, particularly when you read that there was genuine fear among some. And so I take these comments seriously. I look forward to a plan that really makes a lot of these discussion points tangible. I think the idea that we still don't have a common definition on what's inclusive, what's diverse. And I think having that in a plan so that people can refer to, that we can discuss on a regular basis, that we can hold accountability, I think it's an important thing. And it further allows others who may not be involved in this process to weigh in, because oftentimes, again, when it's something so intangible, having these discussions and having sparks along the way makes it something that becomes more of a reality. I'm excited about the prospect that we're engaging our youth and that we're engaging our school district. I would hope that we engage the other schools that are also Los Gatos residents. I know that Westmont, Lee, those are also within our, they're not within our town boundaries, but many of our students also go to those schools, as well as some of our private schools. And so again, this is a beginning that I'm very excited about. I commend staff for moving us in this direction. And I look forward to seeing how this becomes the foundation for the strategic work that the council will be doing in January. Thanks.
Councilmember Hudes, comments?
Thanks. I will be supporting the motion. I wanted to just give a general reaction to some of the ideas. Maybe I should wait. I think the town manager wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, I think we didn't get the motion completely right, correct? We didn't get all the dollars added up. We needed 17 remaining from it, and we needed 14 from the canceled Ready Set contract and 12,000 from the non-departmental. Is that
the motion actually is fine, because we have all of that's within my budgetary authority. So I just I actually raised my hand and I apologize to interrupt both the mayor and Councilmember Hudes. I just wanted to clarify that it's going to take us some time to do the plan. So it most likely will not be ready for this January's priority setting. So I just wanted to put that expectation out there. It will, we hope that it'll be ready later on in the fiscal year, but I don't think we'll be ready by January. So just to moderate expectations in terms of the time that it's going to take to do the public involvement for something like this. Thank you.
Okay, Vice Mayor Risto?
So I'm sorry if.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry if you're not finished. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to make a general comment that the report that I read seems to be focused on quite a few things, as you'd expect during a discovery report. Going forward, as I think a number of others have said, I really think that for this effort to have impact and value on the community is to be less about raising awareness and more about achievable actions. Primarily an actionable plan, and trying to understand how you get to that. I read a report on the government achieving racial equity, which is a resource guide, Government Alliance on Race and Equity. And they suggested several sort of elements that the plan should answer. And I just wanted to read them. I think we should understand what is the timeline for the recommendations. How will we evaluate and report on progress over time? How will we know when the action is complete? Can you retain stakeholder participation? And does it ensure internal, meaning government, as well as public accountability? And it seemed to me that if we're going to be honest about whether this is an action plan, we need to be able to more or less answer some of those questions for the elements of the plan.
Okay, Vice Mayor Risto, you did have your hand up before and up again.
Thank you. Yeah, so I appreciate the town manager's clarification. And, as I think about it, we don't need to have the short-term and long-term plans to move forward with when we're talking about priorities, because, we're continuing this priority. We'll know that the plan is in work. And, when we set our priorities, we'll understand that. So I appreciate it. I also really appreciated in the report the discussion that it's not a linear process, it's a circular process. Well, you're spiraling, you're constantly spiraling upward. And so as we get information, you revisit an area and come back. And so, to the extent that we have metrics where we can see how well we're doing, that is important. And I like the idea that it'll be short-term and long-term goals. But I think in something like this, wherever it takes growth and change, you're never done. Change is constant, and we'll always be working on it. But in terms of specific goals, I think it would be good to have a definition of what we've achieved. So thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Badami.
I will be supporting the motion, but I also wanted to make note of what Dr. Michael Grove had stated, that this is a community problem and it's hard for the town to fix it. So we're going to have to work collaboratively across sectors to find solutions. And I look forward to that. Thank you.
Sounds good. I do have a motion and a second. Looks like no other comments. I'll go ahead and call the question, starting with Councilmember Badami.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Risto.
Aye.
Councilmember Sack.
Aye.
Councilmember Hudes.
Aye.
Mayor votes aye. That item passes unanimously. And that is the last item on our agenda. Does staff or council have anything else? Seeing none, I will call us adjourned. Thank you, everybody. We'll see.